You guys may have a seat. Members of the jury, welcome back. Hope you guys had a nice weekend, feel refreshed, ready to attack the day on this Monday. Unfortunate game yesterday, but the sun is rising and we'll get them back next week. So we're going to continue with our trial here today. Before we begin, can you guys just give me nods of the heads, make sure you guys all have your correct notepads? Okay. I just wanted to make sure given the weekend. So everyone does have the right notepad. We're going to continue with our trial. And so I'm going to look to the state, and the state can call their next witness.
The state would next call Laura Draga.
Ms. Draga, good morning to you, man. Just watch your step over here as you come to your right. You need a glass of water, let us know. We'll do our best to accommodate you.
Good morning.
The only thing I ask, if there's an objection made during your testimony, just pause for a second, let me rule on the objection, and then, depending on my ruling, we'll go from there.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That said, state you may inquire, you're ready.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Laura Draga. The last name is spelled D-R-A-G-A.
Who's your current employer?
The Florida Department of Law Enforcement here in Jacksonville.
How long have you been employed by them?
Since 2006.
What is your current title?
I am a senior crime laboratory analyst in the firearms section.
And is the Florida Department of Law Enforcement commonly referred to the acronym FDLE?
It is.
Can you please tell us about your educational background?
I have a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry and in Biology.
And what are your duties and responsibilities as a senior crime laboratory analyst in the firearms section?
I examine firearms for function, and I examine cartridge cases and bullets to determine whether or not those fired cartridge cases and bullets were fired in the same firearm or multiple firearms. And when a firearm is submitted, I compare those bullets and cartridge cases to test fires to determine whether or not they were fired from a submitted firearm. I also do serial number restorations, and as a senior analyst, I'm the primary trainer for our section.
And outside your formal education, can you describe the training process that you underwent to become originally a crime laboratory analyst in the firearms section?
In 2006, I began an 18-month training program under the supervision of an experienced analyst at FDLE. The initial portion of that training program consisted of reading practical exercises, oral assessments, written assessments, followed by a period of supervised casework where I'm working real cases under the supervision of that more experienced analyst, where they have the primary responsibility for the decisions that are made. And then following the completion of that supervised casework, I was certified to perform independent casework at FDLE.
How many firearms have you analyzed?
In casework, about 1,500.
And during your firearms analysis, is it vary what type of guns that you actually examine?
Yes.
And how does a semi-automatic firearm operate?
So a semi-automatic firearm is one in which once the firearm is loaded, cocked, and the safety is off, the trigger is pressed. Some of the energy of firing, once that trigger is pressed, will be used to expel the bullet from the firearm. Some of the energy will be used to operate the action of that firearm. So if you have forward pressure on the bullet, that pushes it out of the firearm. The rearward pressure will push back on the working parts of the firearm, causing that firearm to extract and eject the fired cartridge case. And then there is a spring which will drive that mechanism back forward again. It will strip a cartridge off of the top of the magazine, loading the firearm again. At that point, you must release and then press the trigger again to fire a semi-automatic firearm. So each shot, again, once the firearm is loaded and ready to be fired, requires a trigger press, you release, a press, a release, until the ammunition in the magazine is exhausted.
Have you testified before in court giving your opinion on firearm identification and functionality?
I have.
And how many times have you testified in this certain area of firearms?
So I don't actually keep track of what type of cases I've testified in, but regarding my work at FDLE and the functioning of firearms and the comparison of fired ammunition components and other duties at FDLE, 155 times.
And what courts?
In Florida Circuit Courts.
And how long has the forensic laboratory at FDLE been established?
Since the late 60s.
And how long has FDLE been performing firearm testing?
Since FDLE was founded. When FDLE was founded, we absorbed the Florida Sheriff's Bureau, and firearms testing had been done at the Florida Sheriff's Bureau even prior to it becoming part of FDLE.
And what type of quality assurance methods does your lab take to ensure the reliable results?
So FDLE, particularly the firearms section, has a standard operating procedure that we follow in every case. In addition, we have other quality manuals. There's something actually called the Forensic Science Quality Manual and the Laboratory Administrative Procedures Manual. All of these have procedures that have to be followed, again, in every case. Every case at FDLE is technically and administratively reviewed by another analyst prior to the report being released to the agency.
And did FDLE receive evidence from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office to analyze a firearm in a case that was labeled victim, and I'm just using initials IS, and JSO CCR number 2018-866278?
We did receive evidence in this case.
And do you recall when FDLE received the evidence involving a firearm and 2 magazines specifically?
According to the paperwork, it was October 3rd of 2019.
How was the evidence received at FDLE?
The agency brings the evidence to our evidence section. The evidence section is staffed by personnel who are responsible for receiving the items of evidence, creating the case and the database, and then moving that evidence to the vault where it waits for the case to be assigned. Once the case is assigned, they can then retrieve the evidence from the vault and give it to the analyst, which in this case would be me. I take the evidence back to my work area, work on it, and then bring it back to that same evidence section where they would return it to the agency.
Is casework randomly assigned?
Mostly, yes.
And does FDLE also assign a unique FDLE number to any item of evidence that's coming into FDLE's possession?
Yes. So when the case is created in the database, it gets a laboratory case number, and then each item of evidence gets a sequential number as it's created in the database.
And was that FDLE number 2019-040-0486?
Yes, it is.
And do you recall when you first received the firearm? I know that it came into the evidence section in October 3rd, 2019.
If I can refer to my notes for a minute.
Will that help refresh your recollection?
Yes. I think I may have misspoke, actually. If I can correct the record, The evidence was originally submitted to the laboratory on May 9th of 2019. And I received the evidence and began working on it on October 14th of 2019. I'm sorry, August 14th of 2019.
Thank you for that correction. And how many items did you receive?
Only one.
And did it have subparts, meaning 2 magazines associated?
Right, so FGLE item 14 was submitted as a 9mm Luger caliber pistol, along with 2 magazines.
Mr. Aggie, I'm showing what's been marked in as State's Evidence 37. Can you take a moment and look at it?
When you're ready.
Do you recognize it?
I do.
And can you show the jury how you recognize the State's Evidence 37?
So if you can see that there's a manila tag here, it has my laboratory case number, my item number, and my initials. In addition, are my handwritten case number, item number, and initials on the slide, and also on each of the magazines. There's a separate tag on each of them here, but those tags are not mine.
Now, can you show them also the yellow barcode, how that's associated with all FDLE received items?
So the yellow barcode that you see here is affixed by the evidence section at submission. The barcode is how it's tracked in the database as to who currently has that item.
And the evidence tape that FDLE uses, is that the red tape?
Yes, most of the red tape here is from FDLE, I believe, possibly all of it.
Okay. And there's also, and we'll get to one of the yellow envelopes in just a moment. When you first received State's Evidence 37, what did you do?
When I first received this pistol, the box was opened and inventoried. So in other words, that it contains a pistol and 2 magazines. One of the magazines has a sleeve on it to assist, essentially because it sticks out a little bit at the bottom, so it assists with gripping that. The pistol was evaluated for any defects. The end goal of this examination is to test fire this firearm to see whether or not it's functional. So before I test fire a firearm, I want to make sure that it's safe for me to fire. I also want to note anything about its condition, which is unusual, or things which could affect a comparison later. So defects would be things like cracks in the slide, bulges in the barrel, safeties that aren't working. Condition would be if there's anything in the barrel. For example, if a firearm is very rusty on the inside of the barrel, that could affect my ability to effect an identification, because bullets might not look very similar if they're fired through a rusty barrel. But all of these are things that we make note of prior to being fired. So we just do an overall visual examination and then a mechanical evaluation, again, to be checking things like safeties, making sure that the slide is moving properly so that it can be test fired.
And again, what type of firearm is this, ma'am?
This is a 9mm Luger caliber Ruger semi-automatic pistol.
Was there anything visually of note when you were doing your visual examination of this 9mm Luger pistol?
So the firearm appeared to be overall in good condition. There was oil in the action and on the inside of the bore.
And what does that indicate?
That someone had applied oil to it at some point.
And did you find the gun to be extremely oily?
Unusually oily for what we usually get. It was very oily.
What can make a firearm oily?
So oil is used as a preservative with firearms. So some of the residues from firing can be acidic and can actually lead to degradation of the barrel and the parts. Soot and debris can lead to the slide not moving properly. In addition, the oils that you leave just from touching things can lead to rust on the exterior parts. So oil is one way that you can use to help preserve your firearm to keep it working in good condition. And so they sell gun oils that are specific for that purpose.
And are gun oils used to clean a gun?
Yes. So you wouldn't want to use anything that's water-based. Water and steel don't really mix because it leads to rust. So most of the solvents and cleaners are organic solvents and oils.
Was it possible that the gun was extremely oily due to being cleaned recently?
Well, I will say that the oil that was inside of the barrel would mean that it had not been fired since it had been oiled, because if you fire it, then you will actually clear all of that oil out. The oil will literally get pushed forward out with the bullet, and whatever's left would be combusted because you have actually flame from the burning gunpowder, and so you'll actually burn all of that off. So if someone were to look at it now, they would see that the inside of the barrel is not oily because I fired it.
Now, were you able to test fire this 9mm Luger firearm?
I did.
And how many times do you test fire a firearm?
So our procedure says that we will test fire it at least twice, and that's so that we can compare the two test fires to each other to evaluate them for entry into a database and to evaluate them for suitability to compare to other items.
And how many times did you test fire in this case?
If I can check my notes to make sure, I believe only twice.
Does that help refresh your recollection?
It would. Yes, in this case, the usual twice.
And after you test fired this 9mm Luger firearm, what did you opine regarding its functionality?
The firearm is in working order.
And when you say working order, does that mean that you had no issues with firing this gun?
Yeah, there were no problems noted during the test firing of this firearm.
And what do you do with those fired cartridge cases?
So, if I can, the fired cartridge cases are returned in a test fire envelope to the agency along with the firearm. This envelope contains my test fires in this case, to include the fired cartridge cases as well as the fired bullets. The bullets are recovered using a water recovery tank, and that allows us to essentially slow the bullet down so that we can recover effectively an undamaged bullet.
Ms. Draga, after you had test fired the firearm, what is the chain of custody at that point?
So the firearm is sealed at completion of the case and returned to the evidence section. The evidence section has a responsibility to return any items of evidence to the agency. So they actually come to our laboratory and pick it up, or it's mailed back. In the case of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, they come and pick up all of their evidence.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. Just a few follow-up questions for you. I just want to kind of summarize essentially what you did in this particular case with this firearm that you've been shown is test fired and make sure it properly operated.
Yes.
Okay. You did in fact test fire that firearm and confirm that it does operate.
Yes.
And my understanding is that there was a little bit of a mix-up as it relates to you returning those test fire bullets at the end of your analysis initially, correct?
Yes.
You did not, in fact, return those test fires with the firearm as your initial report indicated.
Correct. So ordinarily, when everything goes back, we do an inventory of what we have. So I get a gun and 2 magazines. At the conclusion of my case, I want to make sure that I have a gun and 2 magazines in the case, all that the case numbers match. The container is labeled, that the items are labeled. And so every time that I return a gun, as long as it works, I'm going to have a test fire envelope. In this case, there was a little bit of material that was inside of the barrel. I didn't know what it was, but as I said, anytime that you test fire a gun, you're going to want to, anything that's there is going to be gone because the bullet is going to push it out, and then the gas is going to really burn up anything that's there. So I did remove a small amount of an unknown material from the inside of the barrel. With that said, because I'm removing the material, it's not something that I'm keeping for me. It was placed into an envelope. So when I did my inventory of, I have a gun, I have my 2 magazines, and I have an envelope, I made a mistake and didn't double check the envelope to make sure that it was my test fires. So my test fires remained in my cabinet. I sealed up the box. I sent the box back to the Jacksonville Sheriff's, to the evidence section, who sent it back to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. At a later date, I found the test fire envelope in my cabinet and realized that that test fire should have been returned with the box. Contact was made with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and my supervisor and the evidence section. We arranged that the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office should resubmit the firearm and that the test fires could be returned with the item of evidence. So that was documented through the quality system. That was documented through the supervisor. It went pretty much all the way up to our quality manager in Tallahassee. So yes, there was a misstep with the ordinary steps of operation, which would be that the test fires would be returned with the firearm. However, in this case, they were returned at a later time. They remained in my exam area. I have my own office, which is lockable with a swipe card. So it's essentially a locked area that I have access to. And those test fires remained in my office for that period of time when they should have been already at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
Understood. And you did say, as you mentioned, you did correct that and have a supplemental report basically to explain what you just gave to the jury, correct?
Yes. So the original report stated that the test fires would be returned with the firearm. So an amended report was issued stating that the test fires had not been returned as the report had indicated that they would be. And then because the item of evidence had to be brought back into the laboratory, an additional report describing that now we're adding the test fires to the box was also issued. So there's 3 reports in this case. The original one describing the test firing of the firearm, that it functioned. The second report correcting the remarks, and the third report describing that the test fires were being added back to the box.
Thank you so much for clearing that up. Now, you said that, well, let me ask you one other question. When you received that firearm, you don't know anything about it other than that this is your job to analyze this firearm, correct?
I mean, there may be information in the case comments, but in this case, I don't believe that there was a lot of information about where the firearm had come from or, where it was found. I don't think I knew that in this case.
All right, and so you don't know who owned it, who fired it, when it was last fired, or anything along those lines?
No, so like I said, I would say it had not been fired since it was last oiled, but that could have been a week prior, a month prior, or a year prior. I don't know, but not since the last cleaning.
Understood. And so speaking about the oil, you said that it was generally clean, but it was a little oily or very oily in your opinion, correct?
Yes.
You can't tell us if that oil was cleaning oil, if it was the preservative oil that you described, or anything like that?
No, I didn't do any analysis as to the type of oil that it was.
Okay, so it could have just been regular preservative oil that you put, as you described, in order to keep the gun operating, functioning properly, correct?
I don't have any reason to suspect that it's anything but.
But that.
But yes, the preservative oil that I don't know what kind of oil it was, but I don't expect that it's anything but what you said.
Thank you. You stated that just when you were kind of explaining the mishap with the test fires, that you observed kind of a unknown material in the barrel of the gun, correct?
Correct.
You communicated with the biology section within your organization, FDLE, to ask for them to take a look at that, correct?
Yes, I did.
And in fact, someone from the biology section, Mr. Nicholas Kutu, did come and look at that and to analyze that for you, correct?
Well, just to look at it.
Okay. So he did in fact look at it.
He did.
And he decided not to do anything, correct?
Correct.
He didn't take any swabs, he didn't do anything with it. He said it wasn't anything whatsoever.
Well, he said it, I'm sorry, I don't know how to get into what he said without going
Well, that's
getting
fine.
into
You don't have to
hearsay,
tell me that. But
he declined.
Sorry, I'm over talking you. Go ahead.
He declined to swab it.
As far as the gun itself, the reason why you were doing test fires, just to maintain that it was operating properly, is because you didn't have anything to compare it to. You didn't have any bullet fragments or anything like that, correct?
Correct. In this case, I received no fired cartridge cases and no fired bullets.
And as far as what you found in your analysis, there was nothing of relevance to any sort of murder occurring that you discovered.
So the only thing that I can really say in this case is observations that it's an oily firearm. The firearm appears to be in normal working order. I test fired it, and it functioned properly while I test fired it.
Thank you. Nothing further.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Draga, Ms. Draga, good to see you, ma'am. Have a good rest of your day.
Your Honor,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.